and transfer pricing. He contributes to FEMA update column of newsletter published by WRC and the journal published by ICAI New Delhi. His contribution to various publications are NRI Taxation in BCS Referencer, International Taxation Compendium 3rd edition, FEMA in Referencer of WRC, and Referencer on FEMA, a publication of ICAI. He has delivered various talks on FEMA, international taxation and transfer pricing. With these few words, I would request Mr. Yatin Desai to hand over a moment to him as a mark of our love and affection. Sorry.
Respected Patil Sahib, President Yatin, Varsha, Rajesh, Chairman Paresh, my immediate past President Parimal Bhai, Vijay, my ex-students who are very well qualified chartered accountant and well placed in the career. As has been said, there's a mixed crowd. There are veterans, there are young chartered accountants of the profession, and person like me who always have desire to learn FEMA again and again. I must compliment Chairman for really meticulously designing the course. The way contents have been devised, it will carry a long value for all of you. And the reason why I'm saying is that FEMA is a law, as has been said, is a law, is a regulatory law, unlike income tax or indirect tax law. So we have securities law, which is SEBI. You have law to regulate corporates, which is company law. You have a law to regulate financial system in the form of non-banking financial company orders and rules. And similarly, you have one more regulatory law, which is foreign exchange management. But the peculiar feature of FEMA is that among this regulatory law, there are no precedents which are available in public. Even if there is some decision which is taken by Reserve Bank, it is on a case-to-case basis. You won't find decisions. Even under the SEBI law, you will find that there are SAS, tribunal orders or other orders available, corporate law, you have got this. And therefore, when one reads and tries to interpret the mindset of the regulator, one can judge from those kind of precedents, which is lacking in FEMA. And therefore, it becomes more confusing. And till date, I feel that the road is less traveled. Of course, we are lucky in Bombay, as Rashmin Bhai rightly said, and we owe great to Rashmin Bhai, Dilip Bhai, and Bombay Chartered Accountants Society and institutions like Chamber, who have been constantly in touch with this kind of subjects. But the point is that unless there is a structurally the FEMA, it will become very, very difficult to comprehend FEMA. And once you know this structure of FEMA very well, I tell you it is the easiest law to understand. And there are good things about it also. So what Rashmin Bhai has left us, I'll also try to touch upon the economic rationale of some of the provisions which Reserve Bank has been introducing or amending time and again. For India, in 20th century, there are two landmark years, 1947 and 1991, to which even President referred. 1991 is the year where PVR and SMS changed the whole outlook for India. PVR I am referring to is Prime Minister P.V. Narasimha Rao, and SMS I am referring to is Sardar Manmohan Singh. This couple, of course, because of the force measure that we were running short of forex reserves and therefore no other option but to open up the economy. But they really took the bold steps. I am still reminded of the 1991 era when the entrepreneurs, the business class, the other normal citizens were fearing that what kind of impact the liberalization will have. The Coca-Cola, which has left in 1977 because of George Fernandez coming in and restricting, had to come back. They started marketing. Pepsi was making its way, and we were feeling that probably Thumbs Up will be out, and such brands will be definitely out, and we will not be able to withstand the competition. Yes. So till 1991, we were kind of a closed economy, as you would know the term license runs. If you had to manufacture a scooter, you need a license. If you want to manufacture a telephone instrument, you needed a license. There was ITI, I think Indian Telephone Industry. Bajaj was the only company. It was very prestigious to own Bajaj Chetak. It took 10 years to get you the delivery of the scooter. MTNL was always like, Maro telephone nahi lagta, mera telephone nahi lagta. I mean, you apply in general category and OIT category. Why this? This was the reason we never allowed technological collaboration. It was in 84 and 85 when Rajiv Gandhi took over after Indira's assassination, he felt this is rubbish. So 84, 85 you will find that we made a small beginning in terms of at least promoting technology collaboration without any kind of approvals. Otherwise, something like automatic route kind of thing, you submit papers and we'll allow. So Suzuki came, Maruti Suzuki, the TVS Suzuki happened, the Hero Honda happened. And suddenly you find that Indian roads were better, not because of the quality has improved, but the vehicles, Maruti 800 started rolling on the road. The scooters and automobile rolling on the road. That was the reason, because we started this kind of liberalization. We allowed, and we never feared that whenever royalty that would be paid to such collaborator, we were not fearing a foreign exchange outflow. We said first development is necessary, let them come to India. This is the reason we started with 85, 86, 91 it was a precarious situation, we had to open up and therefore we opened up. And that's how from 91 we started that we will allow foreigners to invest in India. We'll allow foreigners to make portfolio investment in India. We said fine, we'll do that. But where is the supporting law? If the law says that we are not allowed and industrial policy says you are allowed, there's a dichotomy, there's a conflict. And therefore we started amending FEMA in bits and pieces between 91 and 1999. And thereafter what you have is Foreign Exchange Management Act. And this is the journey. Just keep this here. So the intention of the new industrial policy was to bring provisions of FERA in line with emerging trends of liberalization so as to remove obstacles in inward flow of foreign exchange and foreign investment. Accordingly, we had FEMA. Now it's an act to manage the foreign exchange of India as opposed to FERA, which was enacted to regulate. Let's look at the FEMA Act. As I told you, we need to be very, very clear with structure of the FEMA. And I am too basic, so probably those who are senior or who know the subject, they will find that repetitive, but in the interest of the people who are maybe attending such kind of course for the first time, it would be better to learn this in detail. So it applies to whole of India and says all branches, offices and agencies outside India, which are owned or controlled by a person resident in India. So you will find these terms time and again, person resident in India, person resident outside India. This is the definition also available under FEMA, but this is how it will go. FEMA per se has only 49 sections, so this is very small act in itself. Out of which section 9, that is 1 to 9, section 9 sections are quite substantive and the rest are procedural or administrative. Section 46 of the FEMA grants power to central government to make rules to carry out the provisions of FEMA. Section 47 of FEMA grants power to RBI to make a regulation to implement its provision and the rules made under thereafter. And RBI is entrusted with the administration and implementation of FEMA. Section 47, if you look at it, it says it grants power to Reserve Bank of India to make regulations, to implement the provisions and the rules met thereunder. This is a broad snapshot of what the sections are. One is application and commencement of FEMA. Two, as such, we know any act if you open, it will carry the definitions, unless maybe direct export, which doesn't have definition in section 2. 3 to 9 are provisions relating to regulations and management of foreign exchange. 10 to 12 provisions relating to authorized person. 13 to 15 are provisions relating to contravention and penalties. 16 to 38 are provisions relating to adjudication, appeal and directorate of enforcement. 39 to 49 are miscellaneous provisions. I'm just giving you a snapshot of few of the definitions which are given in section 2. It's not an exhaustive list. I mean, it goes to there are many definitions, but I'm just giving some illustrative list. One is authorized person. Second is capital account transaction, current account transaction, export, foreign exchange, person resident in India, outside India, repatriate to India, security and transfer. Authorized person is quite an important definition because as on date also, foreign exchange is very, very precious for India as an economy, India as a government. You and me cannot hold foreign exchange. In case you have made some exports and you realize that foreign exchange is due to you, you are supposed to hand it over to the authorized person. You can't hold it. There are few limits subject to which, but otherwise I am saying foreign exchange is the property of government of India. Nobody can hold it. In case you want to hold it, there will be some set directions based on which you can. Say for example, EEFC account, exchange earners foreign currency account. There are set rules which says how much you can park for one point of time. Otherwise, bear it in mind, foreign exchange is the property of government of India. You can't hold it. You can't. The fundamentals of the FEMA lies on the next part, that is capital and current account transaction. FEMA never had this concept of capital and current account transaction. And what Rashmin Bhai mentioned about the crisis of the Southeast Asian crisis or even 2008 crisis is because those governments were quite opened upon capital account transaction, and which India was not. And India was regarded as a backward in thinking, in those days, that you are not opening up your economy on capital. But Reserve Bank never succumbed to those pressures. It continued its cautious policy of liberalizing on capital account very, very in piecemeal and phased manner. And that's how we were saved. And I'll touch upon this aspect again, how still the policies are quite favorable so that, we are not having that kind of, or will not land into that kind of situation what this Southeast Asian economy had to do. What is the definition of capital account transaction? Capital account transaction means a transaction which alters assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities outside India, of a person resident in India and vice versa. I am repeating. Capital account transaction means a transaction which alters assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities outside India, of a person resident in India. So it's an economic definition rather than accounting or legal definition. And current account transaction is a transaction other than a capital account transaction. There's a thumb rule which we have been taught since beginning that capital account transactions are freely permissible. Sorry, current account transactions are freely permissible unless prohibited, and capital account transactions are generally prohibited unless permitted. Now the purpose of FEMA, when you are looking at capital and current account transaction, is that they will look from the perspective of balance of payment situation. So for example, and this is the example which every speaker would give, and that is import of machinery on payment of cash. Now when I say cash, it is not hawala money, I am saying it is official transmission. You are emitting money through banking channels. But import of machinery on cash basis. This is a current account transaction. As is mentioned, it is not accounting concept, it is not legal concept, it's an economic concept. Now what is happening in this case, when we are importing machinery, probably under accounting terminology, you are creating assets in India, You are importing, therefore probably you will act as a balance sheet item, you may do so. So in India, it's an asset, but by entering into this transaction, have I created any assets or liabilities overseas? The point to note is that, am I creating any assets or liabilities overseas? Capital account transaction means a transaction which alters assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities outside India. So by doing so, I am not creating any assets or liabilities overseas, therefore it is a current account transaction. If machinery purchase on higher purchase basis, it would be capital account transaction because I owe certain amount of money to non-resident supplier, and it is obligation of Reserve Bank. At a later date, when I go and say, give me foreign exchange, I want to make payment to my vendor, it will be obligation of the Reserve Bank to honor that commitment and give me foreign exchange. And that's why Reserve Bank looks at it from balance of payment situation. What is due, what is due, receive. So, if it is on higher purchase basis, that means you have created a liability, it will result into capital account transaction. Generally, consideration for goods and services would always be on current account transaction. Transaction represents a creation or acquisition of wealth, shares, loans or immovable property would be capital account transaction. Now for example, I am just giving this kind of poser. Option premium, say for example, is being paid on Nasdaq exchange. Rashmin Bhai mentioned about liberalized remittance scheme, which started with $25,000, went up to $2 lakh and around $75,000 per person per year. Now I am buying a premium on Nasdaq. That means it is not a forward contract, but I am paying option premium which I am paying. Now by making remittance towards option premium, what I have done is I have fixed my losses. In case my calculation go wrong, what I am perceiving market to come to, and if it is adverse, I lose what I have remitted. But if it turns favorable, I will create asset overseas, right? That means I have to receive something from abroad because the Nasdaq will have to honor me. If it was a forward contract and margin money is paid, it is not permissible, but then it is creating liability which is unlimited. And you would find the definition which says that capital account transaction means a transaction which alters assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities. So even contingent liabilities are covered. If I create a transaction which leads to creating a contingent liability, say for example giving a guarantee. Tata Steel used guarantee in favor of its biggest acquisition, Gold. So for example, it gives a guarantee, it has created contingent liability, it's a capital account transaction, and therefore one will have to be cautious. Go to FEMA, see the regulation. But if it is on current account asset, generally it would be free. But by making option premium, coming back to this, probably what I have done is, I have created contingent assets. My losses are limited. What I have remitted, say for example $5,000, that is my premium what I have paid. So my losses are limited. This is a current account transaction. But if it is a forward contract and payment of margin money, it is not permissible at all, but this would be capital account. Because I would have created contingent liability. There are the chances of creating contingent liability. In case of option premium, there is no chance of creating option liability. At the most, it will result into contingent assets, if I may use that term. Now, Reserve Bank of India has been empowered under Section 6(2) of Partnership Management Act to specify, in consultation with central government, any class or classes of capital account transaction which are permissible. The transactions which are not included in the Section 6. So Section 6, 2, 3, 4, 5 are primary sections, and it is the duty of Reserve Bank in consultation with government to specify and to regulate this type of capital account transaction. So 6(2) gives a power to specify the types of capital account transaction which will be regulated. Section 6(3) specifies class of capital account transaction which are regulated by RBI, and every transaction listed in this section is regulated by corresponding notification. Now here is a new dimension to the study of foreign exchange management. What happens here is that as we knew by now that FEMA has only 49 sections. So where are these notifications which are related to capital account transaction cover. So FEMA per se is only 40 lakh section, but these notifications are on every capital account transaction. There is a separate notification. If you try to compare that with Income Tax Act, say for example, you have a separate chapter on capital gain, but it is part of Income Tax Act 1961. You have TDS provision as a separate chapter. But here what happens is that if you buy FEMA Act and you go to Bookbinder, it's the bare act of FEMA, it will be very thin. But every notification is in a way a self-contained code. Now that self-contained code, you will have to read it with section FEMA also. Because there are certain definitions which are given in section 2 of FEMA which may not be there in the notification. So you have to always go to both the things and look at it. Now initially, Reserve Bank of India had, I am talking 1999, RBI had issued 25 notifications covering capital account transaction prescribed in 6.3 and certain miscellaneous provisions. Out of these 25 notifications, 15 related to capital account transaction, 1 on export of goods and services, and 9 for other regulations. As on date, the total number of notifications issued by RBI stands at 298. Maybe more than that. I may be wrong on this. It is as fragile and as volatile as the stock market. Reserve Bank, because FEMA is a law which has to keep pace with the amendments or changes which are taking place in not only in Indian economy but globally, and therefore you will have to come out with pronouncement as and when necessary. You can't wait till 11 AM on 20th February when Finance Minister comes out with a briefcase and ends with a poem in Tamil. You can't do here. You can't do here. You have to see what's happening and change it. Take example of 2007. 2007 was a year when Indian stock market was going crazy. It was 21,000 index. Every day dollar was pushing India, flooded in India. As Asmin Bhai said, every day there were a huge amount of dollars, and dollar started, first time rupee started appreciating. It went to 38 or 37, and there were talks that in few months it will become 30. That was a good thing for India, because first time we felt that our import bills are going down, our oil imports is really becoming favorable situation. But there's a town in India in south which is called Tirupur, manufacturing knitted fabrics, known for cotton exports. Imagine a case of an exporter who thought that when I'm entering into a contract, the dollar is 43, 44. And by the time I'm going to realize it is 37. For him, every day was like a bleeding. It was incurring losses. If I run the factory, it is cutting into losses, because every day rupees appreciating. Factually, the factories were closed. Workers had to be retrenched. There was a huge amount of pressure, and the Reserve Bank came out with a few measures which saved that. In case, for example, you are arranging a loan which is in foreign currency, because rate sources are always low as compared to Indian economy. So you find, he said that if you are arranging a loan from overseas, you can't bring to India unless there is actual need to bring it to India. You will compulsorily park overseas. Because we wanted to fight with inflow of foreign exchange. Reserve Bank India tried very in a succinct manner to say that please stop P-notes. Because that was the money coming to India, and it was feeling that probably there is an unaccounted illegal money, and let's stop P-notes, which is flooded with the stock market. Of course, it could not succeed, maybe because the political will was not there. But the point what I am trying to say is that you will have to keep pace with what's happening, and therefore you will come out with such kind of amendments every now and then. Every now and then. In recent times, one would find that there were quite a few circulars and notification on trade account, on trade transactions. Generally, you won't find on current account transaction, which is on goods and service export, you won't find such type of amendments coming frequently. So they appointed a committee, I'm forgetting the name, and you will find a series of circulars are there. Reserve Bank wants to monitor every money which is due to India. As I told you, property, foreign exchange is the property of government of India. So if you make a single export of goods, even a $50,000 export of, you are exporting goods, there's a declaration needs to be filed, and that declaration information would go to Reserve Bank of India through banker authorized dealer, and Reserve Bank would track that payment, whether it is realized or not. Each and every invoice, can you imagine, is tracked. Each and every invoice going from India, each and every export of goods from India is being tracked. Similarly, export of software. Software is neither goods nor service under FAM. They say it is a software, and you need to file Form SOFTAX. So they were tracking that also. Before this 6 months or so, there was no need to file declaration for export of goods or software if the value of per invoice was 25,000 or less, or maybe less than 25,000. Suddenly they changed the law and they say no, every export, be it $1 export, you will have to file declaration. Probably they were sensing some kind of money laundering. We are approaching elections. There could be huge amount of money coming in. Now it's a good thing which comes to India, but still Reserve Bank probably, now in case of export of software, it becomes very easy through email. One doesn't know what is the intrinsic worth of software which is going. Is it really an export or not? And somebody would remit money to India. Probably with that intention also, but they have introduced series of circulars. The one circular which they introduced which says that in case of tripartite arrangement, there are many transactions wherein it is known as a merchanting trade, or for example, trader from India, Mr. X is importing to, say for example, Hong Kong. And Hong Kong buyer says that payment will come from China. Because immediately when, in fact, I am requesting you to even ship goods to China. And payment will come from China. Till now, Reserve Bank was okay with this arrangement. They never wanted any kind of something in writing. Suddenly they say, no, you must enter into tripartite agreement if such is the arrangement. And you also specify in advance when you are declaring exports, who is going to make money. So these are some of the changes which probably, it keeps on happening. The point and rationale what I am trying to say is that it's a very, very dynamic law, and therefore there will be a lot of changes happening every now and then. The one illustration now coming back to notification is that the same term is defined differently in different notifications. Now there is one term, person of Indian origin. Like person resident in India, person resident outside India, you will have non-resident Indian, and this is person of Indian origin, which is defined differently in these three notifications. We will see those terms later, this illustration later. But FEMA 21 is related to acquisition and transfer of immovable property. FEMA 24 is related to investment in partnership firm or proprietary concern, and FEMA 13 is about remittance of asset. Now each of these three notifications, the term person of Indian origin is defined differently. Now look at the list of capital account transactions. So this is permissible capital account transaction which has its genesis in section 6(2), and you will find the notification 1 which lists out the permissible capital account transaction. And this is the notification which talks about the capital account convertibility or liberalized remittance. We will touch upon that later. Then these are the notifications: transfer or issue of security of foreign security by any branch, office or agency in India of a person resident outside India. It says transfer or issue of any security or foreign security by any branch, office or agency in India. Now this notification 2, what it talks of is that, say for example, Apple is coming out with an IPO or FPO, whatever you call it, and it appoints or it establishes a branch in India, and this branch is marketing this IPO. Now it will be subject to SEBI law also, related to security, but the point is the notification says transfer or issue of any security or foreign security by any branch, office or any agency in India of a person resident outside. This is very rarely you will come across this type of situation because India doesn't allow this type of transaction to take place. Then you have any borrowing or lending in foreign exchange in whatever form or by whatever name. So it talks about borrowing and lending in foreign currency and borrowing and lending in rupees in whatever form or by whatever name called between person resident in India and person resident outside. What is the difference between notification 3 and 4? Borrowing in foreign exchange and borrowing in rupee. Say for example, I am borrowing from someone, and as I told you, even if that I am receiving a loan, that money has to be converted in Indian rupees. When I receive a loan, even I can't park in EFC account because it is not on exports. It has to come to India. It has to compulsorily get converted into INR.